Hi guys, Paulie from the Complete Personal Trainer podcast, back again, and today we're going to be talking about program design, and more importantly, program design and its limitations in the general population clients. So a lot of program design recently has really focused on a number of key variables in terms of looking at volume, looking at intensity, looking at the kind of not really the exercise selection variables, but the acute exercise variables in terms of, time under tension, all those types of things. So it's been really, really good to start having a focus on volume and starting to quantify all those types of processes. Now, what's happened with this is a lot of this research and a lot of these viewpoints and a lot of these opinions and all the information has been focused on stuff mainly to do with hypertrophy-based training or powerlifting, strength-based training. And that's really, really cool that all happens. But what I feel it's led to, and this is an observation, this is not a fact, this is my personal opinion on the matter, so I'd like to preface most things that I say as it's been a fact, it's been proven, it's a theory or an observation. So this is an observation. Observation is that a lot of these principles of hypertrophy, fat loss, all that kind of stuff have been applied to training your general population clients. And what's happened though is because we've been using these principles, we've kind of become a very sagittal plane dominant training system because it's easy to quantify. We're focused on range of motion, that's all fine. But a lot of the movement patterns seem to be in the sagittal plane of movement, which doesn't really develop a whole bunch of athleticism or movement capability or movement variance. And when we're working with the general population clients, we want them to get the best results possible. That's obviously why they come to us. But a lot of them aren't coming to us to look like bodybuilders, to do bodybuilding type training. We really need to key in and remember what people are after. And a lot of it's to build a bit of muscle, but it's not to build the most amount of muscle possible because this isn't their priority in their life. They have other things going on that they care about. They want to build a bit of muscle, they want to lose fat, they want to feel better. It's kind of like those things there. And one of the things that makes people feel better is being able to move well, to have a complete range of movement options available to them, to not be able to, tie up their shoelaces and have their back seized up, to be able to go for a walk or to play a game of tennis and not have, any kind of movement restrictions that are inhibiting them from playing the activity. So the first process that I do with all my clients is I work on the movement screen. I've talked about that repeatedly in all my different work, that the movement screen is a really, really important process for me. What I've noticed for my own programming as well, so this isn't just me picking on the world, is that, there is a huge sagittal plane dominance. So when we put in exercises that challenge the frontal plane and also the transverse plane, so side to side and frontal plane movements, people get a lot better, really good workouts. They feel really good, so subjectively they feel really good. But in terms of feeling better over the course of the workout, they get better and better as they feel more freedom and movement. So what I want to do in my own personal programming is to explore these ranges of motion more and to do more with them to help people feel better and move more athletically as a general rule of thumb. So if we think about our exercise selection, like most exercises are sagittal plane dominant in the gym anyway, that's fine. First thing we can do is we can start looking at shifting load to increase loading in the frontal plane and to increase transverse plane resistance. So this is doing something like a split squat, for example, holding a weight on one side to challenge a transverse plane, the frontal plane in terms of control. So what we want to do in our programming is get someone fairly strong and fairly confident in the sagittal plane, then explore these other planes as well. So how we can do this initially is we can do our normal anti-rotation, anti-side flexion core work, but start loading our implements in a slightly different way to start to challenge these planes of motion. From there, we can then start producing force or strength in those planes of motion and then moving towards power in those planes of motion. So what we need to do is learn the control. So an exercise that could be quite good for that would be a split squat, load with the kettlebell on the opposite hand to the leg forward. That's creating a little bit of a transverse in the frontal plane loading pattern. That's a great starting point for that. From there, we might move into a lateral squat, into a lateral lunge, and then into power movements in that particular plane of motion based on the client's goal. So I know it's a pretty simple model so far, but there's lots of different options that you can go there. Like one example for a movement pattern to actually start working through the patterns of rotation, transverse plane, and also the frontal plane is the half kneeling position, which is where you kneel down in kind of like a lunge type pattern. Hips tucked under, ribs down, core is engaged. And normally we do it like a Pallof press against that, or pressing a weight overhead, because that's giving us control against sagittal plane rotation, transverse plane rotation and frontal plane movement. What we can do is we can then grab like a little weight, like a little 2.5 kilo, 5 kilo plate, put it out, rotate each direction while maintaining hip position there. So we're starting to create transverse plane movement in that rotation throughout the rib cage and the upper back. When we put the weight overhead, we're then starting to create that frontal plane movement there. Looking at exercises like windmills in our training programs rather than 3-point extension rotation is another option as well. So 3-point extension rotation, for those who are watching, it's easy to demonstrate, but for those who are listening, it's basically getting down on all fours, sitting your heels towards your butt, one hand on the ground, the one hand behind your head, rotate in as far as you can, bring your elbow to the other elbow, and then extend your elbow while reaching through the ground to create as much external rotation and extension throughout the thoracic spine. A better way to do that might be to do a kettlebell windmill, where you stand up, feet facing forward, and do a similar type of movement, but you're loading it with a heavy kettlebell. And what that's going to do there is start to build stability and strength and control moving through both the frontal and the transverse planes. So when you're looking at training your personal training clients, a good way to do it, besides just working out our progressions to get to the big three, which is squat, bench, deadlift, and then some overhead press and chin-ups, we should also be looking at creating some movement variability for the general population in the frontal and transverse plane, and then eventually moving it to expressing that power with things like medicine ball drills and stuff like that. If you have a gym that allows you to do medicine ball work, so you've got like some heavy brick walls there that you can do some transverse plane throws and frontal plane throws, clients absolutely love that stuff. And then that's actually taking them from corrective exercise to moving correctly. So guys, frontal and transverse planes, start exploring that with your clients. Your clients will feel a hell of a lot better for it. It'll mobilize their hips in ways that they haven't really done before, and that you can't really do too well with just the standard sagittal plane exercises. Start exploring something different. Start thinking a little bit wider. And remember, our clients are here to feel better, not all of them to get as jacked as possible. So we don't need to target the iliac and then the thoracic division of the lats in every workout. Thanks heaps for watching, guys, and speak to you soon.